Hello, my name is Sean Sperry and I am with the IBM Systems Group. In this video we're going to use Spectrum Protect 8.1 and data protection for SQL Server to back up a Microsoft SQL Server 2016 database that is in a always-on availability group. Now just a quick review. With an always-on availability group you have a primary replica of the database, and you can also have secondary replicas of the database. Associated with those replicas are backup priorities that you can assign in SQL Server. And when you schedule the backup, you can use this always-on priority option with data protection for SQL Server to allow the software to recognize and honor those backup priorities and settings that let you determine where you want to run the backup. For the purposes of using the GUI, however, the backup is going to run on the replica that you choose to run the backup with. Now for our demonstration, we are going to use the graphical user interface, and we are going to use Spectrum Protect version 8.1 and Windows Server 2016. And we have set up a 2-node SQL Server 2016 cluster configured in an always-on availability group. We have one primary replica and one secondary replica, and we're going to use the GUI to do a backup and to do a restore and just show you how that works and looks from a GUI perspective in data protection for SQL Server. So let's do that now. Okay, so here we are looking at our Windows Server 2016, and we're going to do a demo of backing up and restoring a database in a AAG. So the first thing I want to do is just show you that we have two SQL servers in this cluster, a SQL 1 and a SQL 2. And as you can see, SQL number 1 is our primary replica, with SQL number 2 being our secondary replica. Now since we wanted to do a demonstration, I set the failover mode for these databases to manual. In a production environment, you'd probably have this set to automatic. We have only one database here, our Wide World Importers database, and it is synchronized now between the primary and the secondary. Now the other thing I do want to show you is if I look at this availability group and take a look at the properties of the availability group, here's where I set my backup preferences. And again, remember this is for scheduled backups only, not graphical user interface backups. So when we do the backup today, the backups are going to occur where we tell them to occur. But in a scheduled mode, these backup preferences would take effect. And this tells you where the backup should occur, either on the secondary only, primary, or any replica, and sets a backup priority for the server instances. So that's what we're going to do for the moment in SQL Server Management Studio. The next thing I'm going to do is I am going to bring up data protection for SQL Server, the Spectrum Protect product. And as you can see, this is implemented as a MMC, and in the MMC I'd added both of the SQL Server nodes so that I can just jump back and forth between these two nodes in the always-on availability group. Now for the purposes of this demonstration, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the backup on the secondary node, which is the SQL 2 node. And so what I'll do here first is I'll go ahead and click on SQL 2, SQL Server Node 2. I'll do a protect, and I'll do a refresh. And as you can see, on this secondary system, I have a Wide World Importers database. It's in the availability group AG. It's a secondary replica and it is synchronized. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. I'll go ahead and leave my backup method as legacy, which is the API backup, and send the backup destination to the Spectrum Protect server. And I'll go ahead and do a full backup of that. So what that's doing is using the SQL Server APIs to go ahead and run a backup. You could have, of course, do this straight to disk if you were using SQL Server. But with Spectrum Protect, what I'm doing now is sending the backup using the APIs directly to the Spectrum Protect server. And as you can see, that has now succeeded. Now what I'll do is I'll go in and I'll go back to Management Studio. I'll go ahead and look at my tables here. And I'll just make a quick modification so we can actually change something and commit a transaction. So this is the cities table, and I just edited the top 200 rows. I'll go ahead and make that change there just to a city name. I'll go ahead and close the pane so the view can be committed. And now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and go back to my MMC. And notice I made that change on the primary, so the AAG is going to go ahead and ship that transaction to the secondary. And what I'm going to do on the secondary is now go ahead and do a transaction log backup to the Spectrum Protect server. So here we go, running the log backup to the Spectrum Protect server. We'll go ahead and let that log backup complete, and that did succeed, as you can see. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and minimize this. And in order to do a restore from Spectrum Protect of an AAG database, you need to have it out of the availability group. And just to show you that I am doing a restore, I'm going to delete it. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and go to my Worldwide Importers database. I'll do a remove database from the availability group. So there the database is gone. And now if I go to databases and do a refresh, you'll see it's no longer syncing. And I did that on the SQL 1 side, right, which is my primary replica. I'm going to go ahead now and delete this database from the primary side. And we'll let that get deleted. And then when that deletes, let's go ahead and close existing connections too. And we'll go ahead and try that one more time. So that succeeded. I'll go ahead and refresh that. And there our database is gone. And now if I go to my secondary replica, you'll note here that the database is going to go in to restoring mode because it has been deleted from the primary side. And what I'm going to do is, in order to restore the replica, the secondary replica, I'm just going to go ahead and do the primary restore and then go ahead and resync the databases so that it will sync out to the secondary replica using AAG transaction log shipping. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead here, I'll do a delete, I'll do an OK, and now my database is gone from the secondary replica. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my MMC, that is the Spectrum Protect GUI, and I'm going to go here on my primary system, and I'm going to do a recover, and I want to make sure that I have the latest, so I'm going to go ahead and click on refresh here and let the data protection for SQL Server go out there to the TSM server and get the latest backups. I'll go ahead and remove completed from the GUI here so we can just see the latest operation taking place down here. One of the things I'll point out to you that while this is running is if you're ever doing any scripting with PowerShell and data protection for SQL Server, you can see all of the PowerShell commands that are being run by the MMC just by pointing to the command down here. And you can go ahead and copy that PowerShell command, put it into a script and use it, and it works as a good basis for scripting if you're going to be writing the scripts for doing the backup. But this has run on the SQL Server now on the primary side. And you'll note here that I am only looking at the active backups. I'm looking at always on backups, and I have my full and my transaction log backup. Now I'm going to go ahead and show restore options and take a look at my restore options. I don't need to replace it because I deleted it when I did the recovery, so I'm going to leave that to no. I am going to go ahead and run database recovery in the data protection for SQL MMC. You could run database protection in run database recovery in SQL Server after you did the restore. That's your choice. I'm going to let the product do the recovery. And I'm going to go ahead and turn auto select on just to show you that feature and what it looks like. I'll go ahead and hide restore options now. And you'll note that when I select the transaction log backup, because I have auto select on, it also picks the full that goes with it. So I want to restore those two. I'm going to go ahead and restore them to node 1 in the AAG cluster. I'll go ahead and do a full. Now, just as an FYI, if you were in the AAG when you did this restore, SQL Server would automatically remove the database from the always on availability group when you did the restore. Since we took it out before we did the restore, it's not going to be necessary that it does this. So now what's happening is data protection for SQL Server is going out. It's looking at the Spectrum Protect server. It's going ahead and running a restore. And the database is being restored back to the primary node. I'll go ahead and click on databases since that completed successfully and do a refresh. And now here's my database. What I'll do now is I want to get it back to the secondary node. You'll notice that it's not in this dashboard anymore. So I'll go back and I'll go to the availability group AG. I'll do availability databases. I'll do an add database. I'll go through the wizard. I'll go ahead and take wide world importers. I'm going to go ahead and do a full synchronization. So I'll go ahead and click on next. I'll go ahead and connect to my replica and let the validation occur, and then let the Microsoft SQL Server add the database back to the availability group. So that was successful, and we'll go ahead and let that finish. And that was successful. So now if we go back here and look at the databases and do a refresh in SQL Server Management Studio, you'll know that the database is now synchronizing. It's in the AAG, synchronized here. if I do a refresh on my dashboard, I'll see that everything is all synchronized up. I can go out here and look at the database at the table on the primary, and I'll just do an application city. I'll do an edit top 200 rows just to show you what that looks like, and note that the changes in the table that I made. So the transaction's been committed. Okay, so that's my demo of backing up and restoring always on availability groups. I hope you found it useful, and I look forward to seeing you on another video soon.